Gabriel Metsu.
This is the Runners Up Club, a podcast about unsung heroes, lovable losers, and forgotten failures. For those with a few minutes to spend on those who spent theirs in a losing cause.
Hi folks, this is Ray Gustinelli. Thanks for coming and lending me your ears for a few minutes. I promise to return them to you shortly. Okay, people, raise your hand if you've heard of the painter Johannes Vermeer. 8 out of 10, no surprise. And if I said, girl with the pearl earring guy? Indeed, there's the other 2 hands. 10 for 10. Vermeer. Precise lines, gorgeous light, well-composed interiors, ... What's not to like? Now, hands up if you've heard of Gabriel Metsu. A mere 2 out of 10, as I suspected. Okay, you 2 art history majors with your arms raised. Well, you can put them down now, but please stick around for this episode. You can let me know if I err or overstep, which is quite likely because I was not an art history major. 2 out of 10. Distressingly low name recognition for a guy who, in his day, needed no introduction in the arty salons of Europe. Why buy a Vermeer when a Metsu is available? So said a Parisian art dealer in 1800, reflecting the era's conventional wisdom. Gabriel Metsu was a bona fide star in the pantheon of high art, praised by poets and seen as a peer to Rembrandt, Frans Hals, and the other 17th century Dutch masters. Vermeer's work was not widely known at the time. Any comparisons made with Metsu, if they were made at all, were unfavorable to Vermeer. Stop the clock anytime before 1850, in fact, and Vermeer is the minor Dutch master. That sentiment, which had prevailed for over 150 years, would be turned on its head in the 1850s, when critical revaluation of Vermeer launched him into the stratosphere, eclipsing Metsu's star for the following 150 years, and counting. Let's talk about Metsu. He was a storyteller with a mastery of form and technique. He was a stylistic chameleon, equally adept at scenes from everyday life, which was called genre painting, as well as portraiture, historical scenes, and still lives. His settings could be a bustling market or a stately interior. His subjects ranged from the working class to wealthy courtesans, a nobleman hunter, a chicken merchant, a drunk, a baker. Woman Reading a Letter shows an affluent girl doing just that in an elegantly composed interior by the light streaming in from a window. In The Intruder, we find 2 girls being interrupted in a dressing chamber by a gentleman caller who's restrained by an assistant. Metsu's sick child slumps languidly, like Jesus in Michelangelo's Pietà on his loving mother's lap. In these works and throughout his oeuvre, Metsu seemed to capture narratives in progress, moments stolen from larger stories, inviting the viewer to fill in the gaps. Who is that officer intruding on the 2 women? How will the woman reading the letter respond to its author? Presumably the eager gentleman pictured in an earlier work, Man Writing a Letter. Metsu was raised in Leiden, a direct contemporary of Vermeer who was out of Delft. Leiden to Delft is a 20-minute train ride today, about a day's ride by a horse-driven coach in the 17th century. Amsterdam's a day's ride in the other direction. That's where Metsu wound up in 1654, aged 25, where he lived and worked for the rest of his life. Metsu was at the epicenter of the Dutch Golden Age in the 17th century. He founded the Painters Guild of St. Luc with Jan Steen in Leiden, and it's easy to picture him sharing tricks of the trade and a pint of ale with Rembrandt down at the Café Karpershoek in Amsterdam. That cafe is a real thing, by the way, opened in 1606. We have no idea if the painters hung out there, that's speculation. Rembrandt was known to be a drinker of gin and beer, sometimes while at the easel. Those Santa-like red noses in his self-portraits are there for a reason. But we digress. Was Vermeer in the picture? We don't really know. He's a blurry figure historically, unlike his sharp-focused work. It's part of his appeal, I think. Vermeer, the cool genius, the man of mystery, unknown, unknowable. And we don't know if Metsu and Vermeer ever actually met. If they did, they were probably quite congenial. The Dutch art scene was more collaborative than competitive in those days. They surely were aware of each other's work, and critics see influences working in both directions. Metsu died in 1667, aged 37. So young. Vermeer, 8 years later, aged 43. Slightly older, still young. The Dutch Golden Age was pretty much considered to be one even as it unfolded, at least by the Dutch. The artists at its center were grouped into a loose canon of excellence almost immediately. The pecking order, however, was in flux for many generations. Let's flash forward a couple hundred years past Metsu's death. Here's the British critic John Smith putting Metsu at the top of that canon.
Whatever his picture may represent, there will ever be found in it a tasteful selection of objects, disposed in the most pleasing manner, and rendered interesting and effective by a judicious choice of colouring and a skillful management of light and shade. The superiority of Metsu over every other artist in the Dutch school is chiefly observable in the chaste and beautiful drawing of his figures, accompanied by a peculiar refinement of his character, and, where necessary, great elegance of manner.
Mr. John Smith, which was either his authentic name or the worst pen name ever, wrote that in 1842. In retrospect, this may have represented the height of Metsu's acclaim. Unfortunately, it was also something of a last hurrah. Why, what happened? Well, the art history majors out there, if you are still with us, will know that this period, the mid-1800s, is right about the time when Louis Daguerre perfected his technique for capturing images on silver-plated copper. That's right, the birth of photography. Unlike some other members in our little club of second bests, we have here a pretty clear, compelling explanation for why they fell into obscurity, which has nothing to do with the intrinsic merits of the rivals, Vermeer and Metsu, and everything to do with the rest of us. Here's the theory. With the rise of commercial photography in the back half of the 19th century, our ways of seeing the world changed, and with it our impressions of the visual arts. Vermeer is, of course, the most photorealistic of painters. His clean lines, nearly invisible brushstrokes, and clarity of light and color seem to take the painter himself out of the painting. Today, to many, the fact that he almost certainly used lenses to produce his meticulously rendered compositions only deepens the appeal. An artist who is also a pioneer in the science of optics is an innovator after our own modern hearts. We can easily imagine the great rooms of Silicon Valley's tech billionaires decorated with the neat, code-like iconography of Vermeer, can we not? So in a very short time, popular and critical preference reversed from Metsu's open-ended emotional narratives to Vermeer's cool, clinical, static moments. As the culture mavens of the modern world, from the tastemakers of 19th century salons to the literary elite of today, grew to adore ever more fondly their pearl-earringed girls and stolid milkmaids, so did Gabriel Metsu's star dim even further. They were joined at the hip, these two, or perhaps at the fulcrum, for one's ascent seems irrefutably tied, seesaw-like, to the other's descent. So where are they now? Vermeer's moment as a popular darling shows no sign of abating. He tours internationally on a regular basis. His best-known work, A Girl with a Pearl Earring, was the anchor of a popular 1999 novel, a 2003 film, and a 2009 play. The fascinating 2013 documentary Tim's Vermeer explored an amateur historian's reconstruction of a technique by which Vermeer may have actually achieved his photorealistic effects by tracing an image of his subjects projected on the canvas. The street artist Banksy, bless his soul, parodied Vermeer in his Girl with a Pierced Eardrum in Bristol, in the UK. On the other hand, a 2011 retrospective of Gabriel Metsu at the National Gallery in Washington briefly spurred renewed interest in his work, after which point he appears to have returned to the Shadowlands into which he has been banished. Here's a few afterthoughts. In this rivalry, time was doubly on Vermeer's side. His frozen moments, lacking context, strives for the eternal, while his expert emulation of a machine-like precision centuries before machines could paint images made him a man before his time. Will Metsu rise again? Quite possibly. In a world where artificial intelligences seem to encroach daily on the domain of men, a simmering cultural counterforce, the revenge of the non-nerds, perhaps, may yet lead the arbiters of public taste to recognize with renewed vigor the uniquely human artistry in Gabriel Metsu's rich, enigmatic, emotional stories.
This podcast is created, written, and performed by Ray Augustinelli, and produced by, with original music by, Bad Hat Media. Find more at runnersupclub.com. Until next time, keep running.